The business model canvas can be used as a framework on which to hang your own ideas, but it works best when it's used to focus the thinking of a team, completed in collaboration with others. There are 5 distinct phases to using the business model canvas. For this video, we're going to focus on the first 3. First, you need to prepare, gathering your team, explaining the motivation for, and raising awareness of the need to create a business model. This is about setting the scene. Next, you'll need to collect and collate all of the available information, building an understanding of the elements needed. This can include speaking to experts and potential customers, or completing research into the required elements, such as technology. Tools that you'll find useful here include a PESTLE analysis, a 5 forces analysis of competition, and a customer empathy map, which will provide insights into the business context and help to foster a customer-focused approach during the design thinking phase, during which you start to create business model options to be tested. These 2 phases tend to happen together, and this is where the business model takes shape. The first building block is customer segments. Start here so that your business model has an appropriate customer focus. Each group should have distinct needs that require different channels and relationships to generate value. Questions to ask include: who are your ideal or most important customers? Who are you creating value for? What type of relationship does each customer segment want? This may mean you need to decide not to serve certain groups of customers so that you are using your resources efficiently. Adopting a customer perspective will help you to better understand buyer wants, needs, and behaviors. Speak to potential customers and use tools such as the customer empathy map and the buyer utility curve to help inform your thinking. For each of those customer segments, we're creating value. The way in which you do that is described as the value proposition. It ideally describes that aspect of your product or service that distinguishes you from the competition. This can include the way in which you design your products or services to create a premium offer. It could be that you provide a unique experience, or that you do something at a significantly lower price than your competition. Value can also be created by speed of delivery or an enhanced service. Questions to ask here include: how do you create value for your customers? Are you removing a pain or providing something that people want? What do you do for each of those customer segments? And why do they choose you? What makes you different? Articulating the value proposition is something that many people find difficult to do. Don't worry about getting the wording exactly right, as this can be revisited later. If you're struggling, using the pitchable value propositions format will help, as will tools such as the value proposition canvas or the strategy canvas. Each customer segment will expect a different type of experience when they engage with your business, and this is explored in the next building block, customer relationships. Describe the type of relationship required to link your value proposition to the level of offering for each segment. This can range from a personal interaction to self-service or automated experiences, or it could include a more collaborative relationship through a sense of shared communal experience, or even working with customers to jointly create offerings. Questions to ask include: what kind of relationships do each of the customer groups expect? How do you develop and maintain that relationship? How do you interact with your customers? Where are the touch points that you have with your customers? What is the customer journey? And where are the pain points? What is most important to them? The next building block describes how your value proposition is communicated and delivered to your customers. Channels describes the method used to communicate with your customers at each stage of the journey with you. It can include sales teams, call centers, websites, and social media. Questions to ask include: how do your customers find out about you? How do you raise awareness of your offerings and help customers to evaluate them? How do you reach and engage with your customers? Are there any clear customer communities? What routes can your customers use to buy the products and services that you provide? And what support do you offer once a sale has been made? These first 4 building blocks are essentially concerned with the customer, who we serve and how we do it. We can now switch our attention to the back end of the business. The key activities block describes those things that you need to do to be successful. They are the things that you do that are essential to delivering your value propositions and that make the business work. This can include product design, quality control, problem solving, training, knowledge management, or providing a space where other vendors and customers can exchange products or services, such as an online marketplace. Questions to ask include, what are the key things that you do to deliver your value proposition? What are the things that you do that no one else can do? Or what are the things that you do much better than anyone else? How hard are these things to replicate or copy? Resources will be needed to perform the key activities, and this is the focus of our next building block. Key resources are those things needed to deliver the value proposition. These can include physical assets such as facilities, equipment or vehicles, or you may have intellectual assets such as patents, copyrighted material or know-how. Resources can also include your people and your finances. Questions to ask include, what resources do you need to deliver the key activities? What resources are needed to maintain customer relationships and channels? And are any of these resources hard to replicate? Some resources that are needed for the business model to work are not available to you from within the organization. They're obtained through partnering with other providers. Key partnerships identifies who it is that you need to work with to deliver the business model. Define the input that each key partner has on key activities. Focus on those that are critical to key activities. You're not trying to list every supplier that the organization uses. There are 4 types of partnership: strategic alliances with non-competitors, cooperating with traditional competitors, working jointly with a third party to create a new business venture, or transactional relationships that assure a reliable source of supply. Questions to ask include, which key activities are provided by someone else? Who do you currently rely on to deliver those key activities? Who do you currently rely on to supply key resources? And is there anything here that you could not do if you didn't have access to a partner? With a good understanding of the activities, resources and inputs required to make the business model work, you're now able to describe the most important costs that are incurred. These could be fixed costs that do not change as your levels of business fluctuate, or they can vary in proportion to the volume of business that you're doing. You should also consider how costs can be apportioned over a range of activities as the scale of your business increases. For example, unit prices may be reduced as you buy higher volumes. And similarly, economies of scope might be enjoyed as you expand operations so that key activities support multiple channels. Questions to ask include, how are charges incurred in operating the business? What are the main costs? What resources cost the most? Which activities are most expensive? And how do your partnerships drive costs? Which costs are fixed and which change as you do more? Which would change if you got bigger? What are the main costs associated with each customer segment? And how important is the cost structure to the success of the organization? The final element is revenue streams, the money generated from each of the customer segments in return for the products and services that you provide. This block explores the mechanisms used to derive fees from each of the customer segments. These can include transactional sales for physical assets or the usage of a service, fees paid to make use of a service or product temporarily, such as a subscription to a streaming service or the hire of construction tools, or even license fees paid for the use of a brand. Revenues can also be based on commissions or brokerage fees and for providing promotional access to an audience. Questions to ask include, how much do your customers pay to use your product or service? How do they pay? Do they pay before or after delivery costs are incurred? How much does each customer segment contribute to revenues? And is there any kind of seasonality? When are your peak periods? Together, the 9 basic building blocks provide you with an overview of how your business creates and delivers value, how the various elements interrelate, what they cost to deliver, and how much revenue they generate. The most basic evaluation of the attractiveness of your business model is to deduct costs from revenues to determine earnings. Assess your competitive environment to determine if your earnings represent an advantage and whether they can be maintained or improved. Try using the 6 thinking hats technique to assess your finished business model design. Create scenarios to explore how it's likely to respond to certain conditions. This allows you to test the business model before you move to the next phase of implementation.